Hi guys, if you are planning to conduct an interview for your research studies, this is the video for you. Now, we tend to spend a lot of time in interview preparation, getting our questions together or thinking about how much we can cover our topics and themes, but conducting an interview is much more complicated than you think. You actually need to do a lot of things at the same time. Not only you need to question, prompt and probe in ways that will help you gather the possible data, you also need to actively listen to and make sense of what your interview is saying. Now, I don't think anyone is born with an innate ability to conduct a good interview, but if you are aware of the key steps that I will discuss today in today's video, you will develop the skills needed to conduct a good interview. So let's get started. You have to ask yourself whether you have prepared the questions and or themes. For a structured interview, this will involve drafting and redrafting your questions and making sure that you have not included questions that will be confusing, leading, offensive, or problematic for your interviewees. For a less structured interview, you will need to think about the themes you want to cover and whether you will put any boundaries on potential conversation. You may not get this right on your first attempt, so it is essential to conduct a pilot before you construct your final draft. A pilot interview is when you try out your interview questions with not your respondents but people who have similar characteristics as your respondents, or maybe even your friends and family. That's fine as well. Also think about whether you will require a translator. Will your translator translate for you and the interviewee on the spot? Or will someone conduct the interview in the interviewee's native language to be translated at a later time? Or are you after a literal translation, or do you want your translator to use some discretion and judgment in conveying meaning? How will you manage the overall process, including gaining rapport, keeping on time, exploring tangents, keeping respondents focused? These are some of the things you have to think about. There are no rights or wrongs here. It is the context of your particular research question that will determine the best course of action. Decide on how you will record the responses. Recording responses can be done in a number of ways, and you may need to trial a couple of recording methods in order to assess what is best for you and your research process. You may engage in videotaping, which offers the added bonus of being able to record visual cues, but it is often more intrusive. It is prone to more technical difficulties and can generate data that is difficult to analyze. You may also engage in audio recording, which will allow you to preserve the raw data for review at a later date. Interviewers are therefore free to focus on the question answer process at hand. Disadvantages, however, include the unease it can cause for the interviewee, and ability to capture non-verbal cues, potential equipment failure, and the cost of data transcription. You may also engage in note-taking. This can range from highly structured, example filling in a form as the interviewee speaks, to unstructured, example mind mapping the concepts or jotting down thoughts, analogies, metaphors during or after the interview. Keep in mind that note-taking is actually a preliminary form of analysis. You have thought through and made decisions about your data, example what to note and how to note it. You will need to consider whether there is value in also capturing the raw data. In most situations, you will be responsible for both conducting an interview and capturing responses. But under some circumstances, you may also use a note taker. Using a person to take notes or record your interview can allow you to focus and engage more fully in listening and directing your interview. But as well as considering resource implications, you need to carefully consider whether a third party is likely to have an effect on the respondent and the interview process itself. You need to remember that the interviewee needs to be very comfortable in answering your questions, and anything that makes them uncomfortable will not get you the required responses from the respondents. Decide on how you are going to present yourself. How will you strike a balance between formality and a dress that will strike rapport? Is your interview style or the research goal better suited to officiousness or informality? What tone of voice will you use? Will you be trying to be funny, friendly? Also consider body language. Reading non-verbal cues while your interview is reading yours is worth thinking about. Are you both making eye contact? looking down, looking around, coming across aggressive, or looking relaxed. As the interviewer, you are in position of power. Attempting to negotiate this position of power in order to facilitate an interviewee's ability to answer questions with honesty and openness should be the central consideration in interview planning. Make sure that you also take care of preliminaries such as making appointments, allowing for time to travel, interview time, wait around time, arriving on time. Building rapport can be a real challenge if you keep someone waiting, and if you miss an appointment altogether, you may not get a second chance. You may also set up and check any recording equipment in advance because you don't want things to not work when the actual interview starts. You can also think about how you will build rapport, introducing yourself, shaking hands, small talk, expression of appreciation, introducing the study, which will include reviewing who you are, the purpose of your study, why involvement is important, how long will the interview take, and also explaining the ethical considerations of your research, the rights and the wrongs, the assurances of confidentiality, which is very important for anyone who's responding to your interview. Try and ease your respondents into the interview. You can get down to business anytime, but remember, if you start off with a sensitive question or one that might be considered threatening, you may find yourself facing an uphill battle for the remainder of the interview. In fact, it can be easy to get an interview offside, so it's well worth considering how you might handle such a situation. So start off by relaxing questions, easygoing questions, make them feel relaxed, and then you can slowly go into the sensitive topics or the what we call the boring questions. Keep the questions to ones that facilitate the answers. If you simply ask a yes or no question, expect a yes or no answer. Try to ask questions that open up conversations and draw out rich responses. Questions should create possibilities, open up options, dig below the surface, and lower the defenses of the respondents. Keep the conversation flowing. If required, use prompts. Prompts can be pictures, or it can be something else that elicits the response. Giving the interviewee some ideas that might jog a response, and probes, which are comments and questions that help you dig for more. For example, tell me more, or saying really, or why do you think this happens? Sometimes probes can be an acquisitive look or even few moments of silence. It is often said that if you are silent, then sometimes the interviewee tries to fill that silence by talking more. Keep on track and make sure that you also try to explore the interesting aspects of the conversation. If you are conducting a structured interview and you have a limited amount of time, you will want to make sure you are keeping your interviewee on track and moving at a good pace. If your interview is less structured, you may find yourself wanting to explore the interesting tangents as they develop. The trick here is to be mindful of the time and be sure you end the interview with the full range of data you aim to gather. If the interviewee starts talking about stuff that has nothing to do with what you have asked, make sure you bring them back to the topic. You must try to get the information that you need to help you answer your research problem or the research questions. If you are using a formal process and are attempting an objective stance, you will want to consider how you can manage the process without directing the responses. If, however, you accept that your own subject will be part of the interviewing process, or your own subjectivities, or your own thoughts and emotions become part of the process, you will need to consider and openly report on how your engagement might have influenced the conversation. It's easy to overlook observation, or you know, if you think about it, it's easy to think that interview is a very easy process, but it is quite intimidating, sometimes even for the interviewee and also for the interviewer. No matter how well prepared you think you might be, you are still likely to feel nervous at the beginning and wish you did things differently at the end. So make sure you practice as much as you can and try not to direct the responses of the respondents to what you want to hear from them. Be honest to yourself and be honest to the responses of the respondents as well. Finally, make sure that winding down involves questions that round off an interview and ask the respondents if there is anything else they would like to cover, contribute, or clarify. The interview then ends by thanking your interview for the contribution and time and asking them if it might be possible to contact them again if you need to ask any further questions or need to clarify any points. It's also good practice to offer something back, for example, a copy of your completed report. Thank you for watching today's video, and I'll see you soon with my next video. Bye for now.